Warning. The following live broadcast may contain loud, obnoxious, shrill, and alarming noises that might be considered disturbing, if not outright uncomfortable to listen to, especially if you are wearing headphones. I share my office space with an African gray parrot and two parakeets, and I have no control over their behavior while I am live streaming, unlike my regular videos where I have the opportunity to edit them out as best as I can. As you can kind of get a taste of it in the background. If you are sensitive to loud, surprising background noises, I recommend either not turning your volume up too loud or watching my edited pre-recorded videos instead. Viewer discretion is advised. Oh, there we are. Oh, oh my goodness. I don't know what's going on. Like I was fine up until about 20 minutes before I was supposed to start. And then all of a sudden it feels like, oh, I could use a nap right now. And it's like, no, we have a live stream to do. We are not going to nap right now. I don't know what happened. I felt like a crash just happened. So hello, Vidanya, hello, and hello, Joseph, hello, and yes, I see you, my beautiful eyeball people watching from regions beyond. Today, I'm trying something a little different. Usually, I'm streaming to Twitch, but because I am limited, with where I can stream, I decided I was going to try Facebook today. so um if you're joining from Facebook, welcome. And because it's Facebook, and I know in the past we've had some kind of connectivity issues with it. If you are joining us from Facebook, come on over to YouTube, join the sexy people in the chat, keep them company. And while you're here, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever any of my streams and shows and whatever goes live. So for those of you who have been here before and already familiar with me, welcome. And for those of you who are new here, welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Daphne Lage. I am a cartoonist, illustrator, and comic book artist. So I have been self-publishing since 1992, and I am known for the furry fantasy adventure Tall Tales and my medieval fantasy drama, Eagle Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, which is currently on Kickstarter right now. The link is in the chat and in the show notes. It is right here. So Eagle Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn is the story of a unicorn princess exiled into the mortal realm who trains to become a knight, hoping to win a king's favor and save her people. And this is for issue 12 of this 16-issue series. And you can also read both Eagle Raven and Tall Tales on my website for free, so you can try it out before you pledge to the Kickstarter at egoworks.com. EGOWORKS. I'm still tweaking the intro a bit. I'm trying to get that middle ground between too short and too long, and I don't know, just trying to get all the relevant information. So there you go. So welcome. This is my live stream, and usually what I do, actually not usually, is what I do on this drawing live stream is that I draw. I usually just take about a couple probably about 15 to 20 minutes to kind of wait for everybody to get the notifications and come on in. And then what I do is I work on I either work traditionally or digitally, although today I am going to be working digitally. I am currently working on Eagle Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, issue 13. It's I know I have issue 12 up on Kickstarter right now, but no rest for the weary or no rest for the wicked, however which way you know that saying. Oh, hey, Melissa. Hey, hello. So right in this corner right here, we're going to be working in Clip Studio Paint, and I'm going to be working on the first page. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's doing pretty well this time around. The individual issues, it's like that. It's, you know what, it's on trend to what I am used to from the individual issue campaign, so I'm happy with it. So although what I would like, what I'm trying to do is get the campaign to 4K before Monday. We're close, we're very close to that. So I'm hoping to reach that milestone, because it's like that'll definitely put it, in a good position for me. So, but like I said, it's like we have issue 12 on Kickstarter, and I have issue 13 already on the board. I am 6th page. This is going to be my 6th page on this issue. So we're going to be, I already have it shaded, inked and shaded. So today we're going to be flatting it, because I want to have this page like completely done, as opposed to like inking in all of the pages, waiting for all that to finish, and then going back and flatting. I'm kind of like going back to like, let me like have complete pages this time around, because in the end it really doesn't save me time to do one or the other, whether I just do the whole thing like ink and shade straight, or if I just complete a page. I think in the end it's all the same amount of time. It just depends on what I mentally need at that moment. For the previous issue, I really needed to get to like give myself that momentum of getting all the pages inked and then going back and flatting. But for this one, it's like I'm not really rushing with that. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be finishing off this page today. So also, speaking of the campaign, it's like, between this, I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've done this, the draw stream, but I know I've mentioned this a couple of times on the vlogs. But in case you don't watch the vlogs, which is my Monday shows at 11 a.m. Eastern, I have the I'm pretty sure I showed this the last time. I don't remember, but it's like I have the proof for issue 12. I wish it was 13. 12 of Eagle Raven. So this is going to be the issue that everyone's going to be receiving on the campaign. As you can see, it's completely finished and printed, and it's ready to go. So in about a week after the campaign ends at the end of the month, I will be sending off the files to the printer, and within 2 weeks I should have everything back, and I can get started with shipping everything out in April, or by the end of April. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing. But the book is done. So you pledge with confidence, I guess. The other thing that I got proofed, because this issue 12 finished off also the next trade paperback. So this is volume 3 of Eagle Raven that I was able to also get proofed in both the trade paperback size and the digest version of it. I'm still playing around with the smaller size. I just figure that being able to offer up different formats will allow me to, I don't know, like kind of attract people who wouldn't have gotten the large version, because this is kind of like more, if you can see the comparison here, it's kind of like the in-between version between this and maybe like if you collect manga. So this would be a better format for people who collect manga, and this would obviously be the better format for people who prefer their comics to be traditionally American comic size. But I'm testing out both. The books came out really well. I'm really happy the way they came out. The only thing that I didn't realize, I didn't fix the cover. I actually did the cover wrong when I sent for the proofs. Because it was kind of bothering me. It's like, oh, why is Eagle Raven off center on the cover the way she is, right? And what I forgot when I was setting up the file is I forgot to account for the large bleed that the original artwork has, which when I cropped it correctly, when I fixed it, she ended up in the correct position on the cover. So I still like the way this came out. It's just that the next printing that I'm going to be doing will have the correct positioning on the cover. Because the reason why I put like such large bleeds on the covers is because I eventually want to do hardcover versions of the volumes. And they require, because the art gets wrapped on the cover, it's like I need a larger bleed to have the artwork on the cover the way I want it. So what happened was I forgot to account for that when I was putting together the InDesign file. So she's like off center. So she's off center, but I did fix it. Melissa said, yeah, I had to make some adjustments on my hardcover print file today. It's tricky. Yeah, it is. I don't know why. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you would think that all, like putting together these covers or, these books would be pretty much the same thing. But the amount of like fussing with the files just to do a different size is, I mean, it's the reason why it's kind of tedious to put together a book, and usually normal people hire out for this, but I'd rather do everything myself, because especially the thing that throws me off, right? So this is what it looks like on the comic book size, right? The American comic book size, and the margins are pretty standard for this size. Like even the artwork is done proportionately to this. So this size always works for my pages, right? But the problem that I came across when I did a smaller version is that, the pages are not exactly proportionate to this. So there's there's a larger margin from top to bottom, and also it's like the gutter space on a smaller book is a lot tighter for some reason. So I have to like really bring out the artwork from the spine area here, as well as kind of like try to center the pages in a way where the extra space at the top and the bottom doesn't look like too much. So it's always, and then it's like when I do the hardcover, that's a whole other thing that I have to set up. And it's like Melissa goes, yeah, print setup has always been a mystery to me. Well, because in the end, and I really have to stop. I really have to control that verbal tick. I was watching a previous video, and the amount of times that I say, it's like the thing or whatever, it's like there's a lot of verbal ticks that I have. So the thing is, is that it also depends on the printer that you're using. So I'm currently using Mixam, and even though these are all coming from the same company, because Mixam's a broker, the files are actually going to different printers. So even if it's like, so even if I like set up for one printer, if they send it to another printer that has like slightly different variants in their machines, my books are not completely going to match. And that was the thing that I realized especially with the previous digest trades. These I had ordered at the same time, and then this, and then of course I added this separately. And I can tell right away this one is from a different printer. And it's not that it like completely annoys me, but it's like when I'm looking for a consistency across my books, it's like the fact that this one, even though I used the exact same order as these, like this one feels like it was printed on thinner paper, even though I ordered the exact same paper of this. And also like they pulled my pages. Like I said, I set this one up exactly the same way I did this one. And they pulled my pages a little bit too far from the spine, which made it like really tight on this edge. Well, tight for my taste, because like I said, it doesn't quite match. If you can see right there, it doesn't quite match the previous two books. So, but that's why I do proofs. But at the same time, with a printer like Mixam, it's like unless you're sending all these books off at the same time, the chances of it going to the same printer is kind of slim. If you're like if you're sending them all at the same time, most likely everything gets sent to the same printer. But like I said, if I'm sending something separately, this could go to a different printer, and and it's like, so it's just a lot of things that I have to like kind of think about when I'm setting up these files. Oh, hey, Efrain, hey, you know, and it's just something for everyone to think about, that it's like that's what makes setting up books so tedious, because of all like these little micro changes you have to like make adjustments for. Especially the one thing that I really find annoying about Mixup. Don't get me wrong, there's still a very, very good printer. I'm happy for the most part with how their books come out, but there's little picadillos like that, right? And the main thing is that every time I do a proof, I have to always order 10, because anything under 10, they change the printer, they change the machine that the books get printed on, which means that I have to change my files again. So I wish that for a proof I could just get like 5 or something, but then I'm not getting an accurate representation of what I'm making because it's a different machine. But conversely, they can send them to different printers, So so if you're looking to print something yourself, to self-publish, like I said, Mixam is a good option, but it's just like these little things you just have to keep an eye out for when you're printing. But look, look at how nice these books came out. I mean, like, I'm very happy with the digest size. Eventually, once I get everything all sorted out, I will eventually run a campaign just for the digest size. I still have, volume 3 and volume 4 to do in the regular. And then once I have all of the books done, I will run a campaign just for the digest size, just to see how people react to that. Because I know that there are people who it's like there are people who only collect the comic, right? They only collect this. Then there are people who only collect this. And I'm pretty sure there are people who are only going to collect this. So it's just funny to see how it's like how every variation creates a completely different audience, but it's the same book. But again, that's the frustration of it. Hold on. Give me a minute. I thought it was a sneeze. Purple Rain says nothing is easy. I swear to God. No, for real. Nothing can be convenient. Absolutely nothing. You think it should, but it's not. Because also, it's like, if depending on, like, I don't know, like how things go when I reach the end of the series and I have the 4 volumes, um, then the thing that I have to really consider is whether I'm going to print these books at a Chinese printer. There's a Chinese printer we've been looking at, Quinn Printing. We haven't tried them yet, but we've heard nothing but good things from a bunch of other creators who's used them. In fact, with our Tenchi Muyu campaign, they Armature Entertainment printed their trades at Quinn, and the quality is really nice, and they said it was very easy. Oh, Melissa says, "Oh, I'm using Quinn. Can't confirm. Actually, it's pronounced Shin. Can't confirm so far. It's been lovely, and they have great prices. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking of doing as well. Just getting once it's a trade paperback, pretty much we're committed, and there's no reason for me not to have actual stock of my book, as opposed for doing piecemeal the way I'm doing at Mixum. So that's, and then I know that that's probably going to create a whole other issue with setup and everything. I'm probably going to have to like do completely different setup, different files for them, because every printer has different parameters for their books. So, but that's just the way it is. She says, I need your bigger size because my eyes are old and I don't want to struggle anymore. Well, would you print a big old omnibus of all 4 volumes? Oh, as a single tome? Absolutely. That is one of the main goals. That's like the final boss book. And not only do I want it to be a final boss book, like I want to do like a special edition with all the bells and whistles on it. It's like I really wanted. Well, I'm going to do a final omnibus, and then actually, yeah, the boss one is the bells and whistles one, where I want to do, kind of like I have this vision of doing like a special edition omnibus to go with a special edition of the novelization, and they both go together, and they both kind of have like similar format. With like foil and like really nice paper and painted edges, the whole thing. Like I really want it to be deluxe, and you're supposed to have, and so you get like the box, the comic version all together, and you have the novelization all together, and it's like I imagine it, but we're still far off. Purple Rain says, and that's why I'm not a digital comics person. Neither am I. I always want physical copies, and the thing is that, speaking of Melissa's bad eyes, because so do I, like I literally had switch between 2 glasses just to function at my desk. It's very important for me at this size to still have everything readable, and it's like, and as long as I can read it, I figure that everybody else can read it too. And actually, I've had people thank me for the size that I have my font at this digest size. But also, the thing is too, is that that's why I also did the novelization as well, because then it's like for people who don't like to read comics, or they have a problem reading comics, even at the larger size, with the novelization, they can have it on an e-reader where they can, like enlarge the text to however comfort level they need at. Although I was told by somebody that my comics are e-reader friendly, that they have an e-reader that reads because they have a visual impairment, and they have an e-reader that reads books out loud to them, and they said that that their reader can read my comics out loud to them. So you have that, but that's all. But I have the novelization, which allows people to enjoy the comic in a different way. It's just, also it has all the different expanded scenes and brand new scenes and extra lore that you're not going to get in the comic because different formats. There's stuff that I would have loved to put in the comic, but it would have just expanded the series way too long, without really adding to the format. While with a novelization, I can put in all that extra stuff and people aren't going to find it weird. And I can control the pacing even with the extra information, where in a comic it's a little bit more difficult. It's very easy for a comic to get bogged down, especially with scenes that, they may have extra information that's good for the reader, but it doesn't really work in terms of comic book pacing. So my final the thing that I would love to see is the comic book omnibus and the novelization done in this like really, really deluxe format. But going back to Purple Rain, it's like, I'm not a fan of digital comics either. I just I've tried it, even like reading it on a tablet that's large. It's like I don't know. It just kind of like, that's not what I'm looking for. That's also the reason why I can't stand reading webtoons. Like digital comics that are set up for scroll, I cannot read that shit at all. There is not one webtoon comic that I can read. Like they have to put it out in a physical version for me to be able to read it. I refuse to read it on my phone. I really hate that scroll. And it's just, I don't know, it like hurts my eyes and it's just like really annoying. It's like, it annoys me reading on my phone, and I don't have a tablet right now. But the thing is though, the larger tablet doesn't it doesn't improve anything. It really doesn't. It's just the same thing, just larger. It's just more annoying and larger. So I completely understand, like comics need to be read. There's just something about comics being printed, no matter the format, no matter the size format. It just needs to be physical. I can really only read physical comics. Novels, on the other hand, that's different. It's all text. I read it on my Kindle without a problem. I love reading in dark mode. I found that that's the best way for me to read on a Kindle. So that's so that works out better for me. But when it comes to a comic, I have to read it physical. So we're almost at the half-hour mark. So let me just switch over. The screen so we can actually start working. And so let me do that, and I'll be right back.
You really want to know my process?
Absolutely.
Usually starts with a holla and ends with a creamsicle.
And then if there's time in between, Thundercats. Ho!
There we go. So here we are. So this is the page that we're going to be working on today. Little Dixie, she says, they say, I do webtoons and I hate the layout, but it's good for trying to get your name out. I would love to publish if I can get a number to do a Kickstarter. Yeah, that's always the trick, is, building up your audience. Because it's like, even though Kickstarter is good, like even for a first timer, that it's like, I don't know, the searchability, not the searchability, but kind of like people can seem to find your stuff on Kickstarter better than on other crowdfunding platforms, but it still requires you to bring your own audience to the platform. Like you're only, if you start on Kickstarter, you're only going to get like so far. Like, I mean, my first Kickstarter, I think like I made like $500 on it, and it's like, but it's like, but once I really started to get the hang of it, now I'm at a point where it's like even with my Kickstarter now, I think I'm just above like 100 backers. And usually with Ego Raven, I usually get like between 130 to 150 backers. It's usually around that range. But it's something that you still have to build on top of. It's like you can get that initial exposure on Kickstarter, but you still have to build up, whether it's doing webtoons or on your own website or just trying to like, just putting together a mailing list. Make sure you put together a mailing list. Just doing that yeah, it's like yeah, but it's like, but once you see that you have like a consistent amount of people, then it's like you can take that chance to do I would recommend doing a small Kickstarter. It's like, like a very low, just to kind of like get your foot in the door, because it's like, look, nobody goes onto a Kickstarter and like off the bat makes like 10 grand unless and usually when they do, it's because they've been setting up that audience for decades. It's unfortunately, it is a long, it's the long game, in the end, it's the long game. So here we are. This is page 1 of issue 13. And so just to show everyone what I'm doing here. So I've already inked, as you can see. So I've already inked the page, and I've laid down this green color, which is going to serve as my base for my flatting. And what I did in advance is I put in the shading and the highlights. And so the shading, this purple shading is on a multiply layer, while right now the highlights are just on a regular setting. When I'm done with it, I'm going to put it on brightness, but right now I have it on a regular setting so I can actually see it, because once I put it on brightness, I'm gonna have a hard time seeing where those highlights are. So by using this green color, what this allows me to do is when I put the flats in, the shading and the highlights will adjust on their own according to whatever colors I put underneath it. So if I needed to make any changes, I only have to change the flat color. I don't have to change anything else because it'll adjust accordingly. So but when I go to put in the flats, I prefer to work with those layers, the highlights and the shading shut off, because I don't know, for some reason I find them like really distracting. They get in the way of me being able to color, even though we are just talking about flatting, right? And just to kind of like show what I'm talking about. So I'm on the green layer, so I'm going to take the color that I want, and then what I do is I use the lasso tool, and I pretty much just I used the wrong one. I pretty much just select the area that I want to fill, and then that's it. It's like, that's pretty much what I do. It's like, I don't usually use, like, I could also, actually, I shouldn't say that I don't use it, because I do. Sometimes, to save myself some time, I use the magic wand tool. And you got to remember too, I'm also working underneath the ink layer. So when I use the marquee tool, it uses the ink layer as a reference, and it gives me a bit of a margin underneath it, so that it's still selecting the area, but it's also underneath the inks, so I don't have to worry about like those little anti-alias outlines, so it gives me a really clean coloring. So with so in this case I used the magic wand tool instead of the lasso tool, and then now I could just take white, and then I could fill it in, and it fills into the areas at the same time. The only thing that I don't like about the magic wand tool is that if I have a lot of sharp edges, like with the hair here, it has a tendency to kind of like not be able to get into those little areas. And then when I use the fill tool, I have to go in and I have to clean that out. And it depend and it's kind of annoying depending on but if it's just like a clean shape like that, it's very easy. Then I'll use the wand tool to just fill it in. But other than that, um I much prefer to use the lasso tool and just tracing out the area that I need like that. And then I could just fill it in like that. So let me just continue that. And also the thing that's important too, that I do is that when I was teaching myself how to color digitally, the thing that really struck me is limiting your color palette. Because especially with digital coloring, it's very easy to get really caught up in the millions of hues that you can choose for your coloring. And what I felt was necessary for me to do is that, well, if I wanted to finish these books, to finish these issues in a reasonable amount of time, I had to put limitations on myself on what I'm doing in order to be able to accomplish that. And the way you do that is just like narrowing down your characters to a very specific core to core colors, right? And then like doing the same thing to your backgrounds, like just limiting it to core colors. And then pretty much what I do is that's where the shading and the highlights come in, where I let that do the heavy lifting on the flat colors, or at least the limited palette that I'm giving myself. So also it's just a lot nicer that once you have that limited, once you limit your colors, that it saves you a lot of time. Because you're not sitting there with decision paralysis, fussing with a shade of color that nobody is really going to notice. And it's probably going to like flatten out once it's printed anyway. So, so just by, really just like sticking to core colors and pretty much keep it simple, right? As long as you just really keep it simple. Right. So I just want to finish putting the flats on her so that I can show you what it looks like once I put the shading in. You'll get a better sense of that. So you know, so here's the first color with the first character with the flats, right? So then once I put the shading on, now it's like, oh, now something's happening, right? It's the same thing here. So like if I were to change the highlights to what it's supposed to be, it's like now you kind of see how it's all coming together. And I didn't have to spend that much on the flats. And like I said, I can change like any color and the shading will change with it. Like to give you an example, I could change that and the shading still remains correct. You know, and I don't have to worry about that. You know, it just saves a lot of time. But magic, yes. Absolutely. It's magic. So, you know, so Little Dixie mentioned webtoons, right? Which is, you know, part of the conversation that I want to have about the topic that I chose for today's stream, where it's not really related to webtoons, but it's kind of a part of it. Oh, hey Jody, I see you. And about a month or so ago, I think this campaign, about 2 months ago, this campaign had gone live on Kickstarter. And I haven't really been able to stop. Well, I have, you know, it's like I'm not thinking about it as much now because now it's over. But there was this campaign that was 2 comic books done by 2 authors, Monsterotica authors, who decided that they were going to do comic books based on their books, their novels. And these were just 20-page comics because they were just doing a comic section, a comic book of the sex scenes in their in one of the sex scenes in their comic, in their novels. So they did a comic of the sex scenes, you know. So it was, you know, so it was just like, you know, they hired, so it's like this team, this studio did the comics, did the Kickstarter, 2 20-page comics for $75. The campaign ended up making like, I don't know, $65,000 around that, right? And I couldn't help, as much as like I was happy they were successful because of what they were doing, that they were able to like sell comics to novel readers. The thing that kind of got me, was kind of irritated, kind of like, you know, aside from the amount of money, they came out of the blue, right? As far as I was concerned. Where hold on, let me just find a previous page that I can reference the I can reference the colors. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, okay. Oh, actually, no. Let me go back to the previous open. Go back to 11. Where is it? This one. You know, like they seem to okay, so the whole point, right, is that here's these people who did a comic book, right? They raised $65,000 on Kickstarter or whatever, right? And you know, and I think what like really got to me, aside from the money, of course, is like these people didn't know anything, as far as I could tell, about the comic book ecosystem on Kickstarter. They just came in, did their books, raised money, called it a day, right? Like they didn't they didn't have to like know anything about like what was really trending in the comic book section, or like just so that started, I don't know, like kind of a conversation about the idea of like, in the end, does it matter that they don't know anything about the history of comics when they still were able to raise $65,000 on Kickstarter anyway? Right? And, that kind of got me thinking about like a whole bunch of things in the comic book section on Kickstarter where, people are coming in thinking that, doing comics is, like quick money or easy money. And you can tell that these people have no, like they just think that comics is just pretty pictures strung together, and you plop some dialogue on it and you're good to go. I mean, the funny thing is that what doesn't help with this conversation is that Todd McFarlane was recently saying that it's like, well, comics is all about the artwork anyway. I can have a comic drawn completely like by Michelangelo, and it will still, even if my dog wrote it, it would still sell because the artwork is the most important thing of a comic. And it's like, it's kind of hard on one hand, it's kind of hard to how can I say this? Oh, right. Well, that's true, Melissa. It's like I'd read a comic written by a dog over a comic by AI at least. Exactly. I would too. I would too. It's a very at least the dog has to show some talent. But when you have Todd McFarlane saying something stupid like that, it's kind of hard for me to all of a sudden impose this standard on these people who did these two erotic comics, because it's like, well, if Todd McFarlane is correct, it doesn't matter, it's like whether they know anything about comics or not. As long as the shit's pretty and as long as people buy it, then who cares? Like, your dog could have written it and nobody cares, right? So this argument, so this whole thing about people just coming in and not knowing the history of comics, or but they want to do comics, it's like, well, you've already had Todd McFarlane kind of like blow that out of the water. Like, he could give a rat's ass if you know or don't know anything about comics, as long as your book sells, right? I think so the thing is that I was kind of like trying to figure out, it's like, okay, so it's like, so what exactly am I really uptight about with these people just coming in and pretty much being able to dominate a space for a little bit that we have been kind of slogging in for like years, and not see a fraction. Well, technically we do see a fraction of the success, just not the fraction that we would like. And so maybe that was like my real issue, that that it's like here were people who literally didn't know anything about comics, but their audience was so big that it didn't matter. Their audience was going to buy the comics anyway, even if nobody was a comic book reader. But at the same time, they wanted to see artwork of these characters, like having, like, they had the novels, right? And the idea of seeing artwork of these characters that they enjoyed in the novels excited them enough as an audience that they had no problem spending $75 for two 20-page comic books. So, hold on. Right. So, let's see. Todd was half-baked and half-right. It depends on the current trends of the buying audience, considering that most modern comic collectors is treating comics like a poor man's art collection. Yeah, because most of them, they're only buying for the covers anyway, right? The whole variant cover thing. They will treat the story as a secondary thing, if they even read it. Like, honestly, it's like, yeah, it's easy, it's easy for him to say that. The thing that I found funny about Todd McFarlane's comment about his dog is that he didn't give the example of his dog writing Spawn. Like, he didn't say my dog could write Spawn and I'd still be selling millions of dollars worth of comics. Right? He didn't say that. He said Michelangelo could have been doing the comic, which I found was a pretty interesting tell, because even though he's saying that the story doesn't matter, in a certain way, he's also low-key saying he's not going to outright say his dog could write Spawn and he'd still, and it wouldn't matter. Like, I don't know, like, he still holds his own work to a certain standard that he didn't want to use his dog writing as an example for it. Even though, it's like, Purple Rain says story and art has to be equal. And I agree. It's a comic book, and I think that what makes comics the interesting medium that it is that it's not a novel and it's not a picture book. If you just wanted to look at artwork, you could just buy an art book. If you just wanted to read the story, you could just buy a novel. But if you want to enjoy a comic book, the art and the story has to work hand in hand to give you that experience. So let me just darken that a bit. Yeah, much better. So, oh no, not much better. No, I don't. Oh, we'll see. Let me. So yeah, so it's like, let's see. But does his comment mean that Spawn is shit because his art sold to 300 plus issues? Well, but sure, that's how I would read it. But like I said, he didn't use his dog writing Spawn as the example. He said Michelangelo could have done a comic that his dog wrote and it would still sell, right? So like I said, it's like, it's kind of like your Freudian slip is showing. So knowing that one of the biggest selling creators in comics, even he kind of dismisses the idea of who gives a shit, like of knowing anything about comics, right? It's like, who gives a shit? It's the art that sells it. As long as the art's good, who cares, right? Like, because it's like, yeah, so how can you have that? So you can't really hold other creators to a standard that they could just point to Todd McFarlane going, well, he doesn't give a shit. He just says it's all about the artwork. And in the end, that's what made this campaign for these 2 books based on these novels. The artwork sold the books. It's literally 2 comics about characters fucking. That's it. It was pornography and, it was pornography. So it's like, does it really matter if they know the history or don't know the history? Little Dixie says, the manga anime community from both America and Japan on X had an argument about Western fans only caring about art and animation while Japan cares about the story more. Is it just a culture thing? I don't know. I don't know. Because it's like, it's like, because I think that the story has to hold in order for a comic to really have legs. You see, because that's also the thing that someone had brought up. It's like, yeah, maybe the flashiness of really good artwork can sell a book for a while, right? Or for a little bit. But if you want people to really be invested, but then again, we're also talking about Spawn sold 300, is up to 300 issues. But it's like, so obviously people are invested in that series that it hit 300 issues, but that could also be a form of just marketing. There's 300 issues because he made it 300 issues. He had the wherewithal to make it 300 issues. But it's like, for me, take something like Violet Evergarden, right? Like that's a series that really that I consider one of my favorites, right? I only know it as the anime. I know that there's some light novels. I don't think there's a manga for it, because if there was, I'd be collecting the shit out of it. But I know it's light. There's some light novels, but I don't know if I don't think that they've translated those to English yet, because I would be curious to pick one up. The visuals are nice. They're lovely. Visually, right? But if it wasn't for the story, I don't think I would have really cared. The artwork would have, the visuals would have only carried me so far. Purple Rain says, I have to disagree. I hear all the time people dropping books because of the story. And honestly, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Because, like I said, there's only so much. You can't expect the artwork to do the heavy lifting. Honestly, it's like, I think that Spawn, it has a combination of, it hits a particular button that a particular demographic likes. And also Todd McFarlane has the finances to push a series to 300 issues. Literally, he's a manufacturer. Spawn is a product. It's but when people want a story that's actually, but people really want to collect a book. They want the story to mean something, right? It's not just about the artwork. But I guess in the case of the people who did the novel / comic book thing, I think in that case, the reason why the story didn't matter, because that's what the novel was for. And then the whatever art was in the comic was just a supplement to the novel. So like that campaign literally ignored all the so-called rules of comics. You know, like, yeah, like going back, yeah. So it's like, yeah. So for Violet Evergarden, the story still had to carry me to the end of the series. You know, I had to care about the characters enough to hit that ending. And if, you know, just being pretty is not good enough, you know, especially when we're talking about, you know, like a format like animation or a format like comics, a format like manga, right? And let me see. So yeah, so I don't know if it is a culture thing. Because it's like I don't know. It's kind of like, because I don't know. It's very easy. Um, Joe D says you're supposed to drop a book because of story. People need to get that they are being cheap because they don't want to for an art book. Oh, they don't want to pay for an art book commissions or one of one. Um, you know, I mean, like for me, I don't know. It's like, so yeah, it's like, going back to the culture thing, right? Because the thing that, like, you kind of like hit on something, Joe, when you're talking about like people look at comics as just like art collections rather than something to actually enjoy as a totality. Like they're just buying, you know, like, yeah, it's a cheap way to collect artwork. Um, you know, especially considering um like say, do I want that to look like that? I don't know. Oh, hold on. Let me use my different swatches. Maybe. Okay, let's do that. Um, do that. Hold on. Let me gather my thoughts here. There we go. You know, yeah, so it's like kind of like, so comics are like a cheap way to collect artwork. And I think like little Dixie was talking, you know, was talking about it as a culture thing, you know, people want the story. Um while Americans just want the artwork. And I'm not sure if that's, this is conjecture, I'm pulling this out of my ass. Um whether it has something to do with the way in the United States, especially, art has been commodified to content, not as something that you actually sit with and enjoy. Um, so people who say that, oh, you know, Americans are all about the artwork because it's very easy to digest. You just see it and that's it. Like, and but also you got to remember too that Americans read at a 6th grade level, the average American. So, and yeah, and then it's like, it's kind of like people don't, you know, like it's easier to just suck up artwork as content than it is to actually sit down and read. So, you know, and especially when you're talking about like animation where, you know, you're just watching, right? And even then it's like, you know, like it's kind of like, well, they're telling you the story, so you don't really have to pay attention to it. And you know, and I kind of wonder maybe like that might have something to do with it, that, you know, and the ironic thing about it is that they're not engaging with the artwork either. Like I said, they're just like kind of like just slurping it all up, you know, and it's just like, oh, you know, next piece, right? Um So I don't know. It's like I really don't know if that is a culture thing, because it's like I don't exactly, well, because I'm not on X. I got better things to do than be on X. um and I've been trying to limit my social media uh you know interactions. I'm trying to keep it to a minimum. Um and I gave up a lot of platforms because of that. Um It's like, yeah, it's yeah. I don't know. I don't know. But so like so the thing I don't know. Like I guess like the thought that I was like kind of like thinking about in terms of going back to that original, you know, like like in the end, it's like, was I just upset that these people decided to just make a comic when they never made a comic and they made that type of money, you know? As opposed to someone like me who's been doing comics since 1992, and it's like, and I've yet to even I've come close to making a $10,000 campaign, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Um, and that maybe it's like, the idea that if you're in comics, you have to have a certain knowledge base. Like in the end, they were able to sell $60,000 worth of comics without ever knowing who Jack Kirby is, without ever knowing Marvel or DC. It's like, and I'm pretty sure the extent of what they know about comic book characters have more to do with the movies than anything else. Um, let's see. Joe says, if it's a culture thing, I would wish that people would stop seeing manga and American comics as two different mediums. They're both just comics, just different forms of storytelling. Well, that's also another thing that I want, like I think is kind of related to this too, because American comics, people who are really into American comics to this day, they really, really don't want to admit that manga is the force that it is, right? And then not only that, but it is the same thing. It's like manga is just Japanese for comics. That's all that means. Manga, it's like, now what we imagine, like I'm not going to call like a mainstream comic, American comics, manga, because by saying manga, people have an idea as to what that means. It's like it's Japanese influence, or just from Japan directly, like, and it has a certain storytelling language that's different from American comics. And just because, but there are people who are collect American comics, like the American comic book scene really has a hard time accepting manga as we're all part of the see It's just a different branch on the tree. It's the same thing how you really don't hear about, Franco-Belgian comics, which is the books that I like to collect. Actually, those are more the comics I like to collect. There are French comics, like books that look like this. I mean, this is definitely not a manga, that's for sure, but it's definitely not an American book either. It's a completely, it's like, but it's still a comic. The only reason I don't flip this open is because it's European. They have different sensibilities than Americans do. So I'm more likely to flip it to a page that shouldn't be on YouTube. Okay. So did the campaign hurt your creator ego despite knowing that the campaign isn't a long-term project? 65K for a one and done as opposed to 3 to 6K for each part of an ongoing series. Oh, was there supposed to be a comic on the screen? Well, I just showed one. But I can't open it because it kind of has adult stuff in it, like, you know, because it is an adult, not adult as in porno, but just adult as in this is for adults. You know, so this is Eagles of Rome, and it's a fictional retelling of there is, that's the page that I'm working on. So yeah, let me show you. So this is the first page of issue 13 that I'm working on, that I'm just putting the flats in. There is a comic on the screen, as you can see here, and there are some pages that I really shouldn't be showing on screen. So it is the first page of the comic. So yeah, because it's the first page, it's more like a pinup. It's an establishing shot pinup rather than a comic page. So yeah, no, your camera's fine. The camera's fine. So where was I? Oh yeah. So let's see. Let's do this. Yeah, you see, what's funny, it's like, Joe, it's like, you know what's really funny, now that you mention it, it's like you're right about that it's like I have to really think about the fact that, yeah, it's like this is probably a one and done project. I'll be surprised if they do another one of these within 2 years. Like, honestly, like, you know, which, you know, and then it's like, once you do the math on it, it's like it really stretches out, you know, like the amount of money that they made, you know. So you know what, it's like, I guess it's like, you know, I just got all in my feels, because it's like, you know, it's kind of the idea that on a certain level, I was irritated that I felt that I kind of low-key probably thought they didn't deserve it because they didn't earn their right. But then at the same time, that's kind of a stupid thing to think, because it's like that has nothing to do. I mean, obviously their audience didn't give a shit. Their audience didn't care. Their audience bought it. So in the end, it's like, that's what counted. Right? You know, so it's like, yeah, so I was just like, I don't know, just kind of like all in my feels about it, for dumb reasons in the end, right? You know, like, in the end, it's like, if you do a comic and you have the audience to support it, that's what it is, right? I mean, Keanu Reeves taught us that, right? That it's like, this is a guy, it's like, look, yeah, he talked shit about, you know, it's like, oh, I love comics and blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, the project, the Berserker project was like a proof of concept for him to get a Netflix deal. That's it. You know, it didn't need to be a comic. It was just, a comic was just an easy way to show that there was interest. But the only reason there was interest was because it was fucking Keanu Reeves. You know? You know, honestly, it's like, if there's anything I'm still salty about, is that whole thing. Because the way people were just like all over that campaign, oh, it's going to save indie comics, it's going to save, no, it didn't save shit. It did nothing, you know. Enjoy lunch, Joe. You know, you know, and also, like, the other thing too, right? Because the kind of related, I would think, is I guess going back to the whole cultural thing between American comics and manga comics, right? And Japanese comics. It's like the manga comics is redundant. Because the other thing that I see with that, that I think is it kind of has like a similar thing through line, right? You know, like the whole like you didn't earn your place is when a webtoon artist comes on Kickstarter and really blows up. You know, there's several webtoons that's done that. And then it's like, you know, you have, and then it's like invariably you have a lot of indie creators going, how the fuck did they do that? You know, or you have like these really like they didn't put their stuff on webtoons, but they put them on their own website, and like for the past 5 years they've been running their comic on Patreon or something, and then they finally do a campaign and they're making 30 grand, you know. And you know, and the you know, and then it's like invariably it's not me in particular, but then I see other creators going, how did they do that? It's like they just came out of nowhere, blah blah blah. How dare they? You know, it's like, how do they make a comic and then, you know, just show up and then make 30 grand on a comic, right? With their mangoos, you know, it's, you know, but it's kind of like, but it's the same thing that we're talking about, where it's like they think that, oh hey Lou, you know, that somehow there's this belief that it's like, oh, you're not really part of comics because it's like you don't know the history of comics, you don't know where we came from, you have no right to this space. Which is why, you know, the thought is that it's like that these complaints, that these arguments are really just a form of gatekeeping, or at least an attempt at gatekeeping, that it's like, oh, these webtoons are not real comics. You know, it's like the manga's not real comics. You know, I mean, it's just, I don't know if I'm making any sense with this. Like I said, it's just been something that's just been bugging me. And you know, it's like I'm just like, you know, just trying to like sort out as to what the deal is. I mean, but then it's like, let's get out of the feels for a little bit, right? Let's get out of the feels for a little bit. And let's talk more about technique, right? Like comics language, in terms of translating certain, like how certain things translate or don't translate into comic book form, right? Because if there is a pet peeve that I have about people who are not familiar with comics coming into comics, it has less to do with you don't know who Jack Kirby is, and has more to do with you guys couldn't string a story with pictures if someone put a gun to your head, right? Like that's kind of like my beef. I am pretty sure if I had spent the $75 for those two comics and got those two comics, I would be able to tell immediately whether the artists who work on these books are actual comic book artists. Because the beef that I really have with a lot of these amateur creators who come into the space is that they really do think that comics is just pictures strung together by word balloons, right? When that's kind of not the point. But again, going back to Todd McFarlane, he doesn't give a shit. His whole thing is like, well, yes, it is pretty pictures. That's what sells the books. And you don't need to have a story there to sell a comic. As long as you have the pretty pictures there, you have a comic. And So as a craftsperson, let's look at this as a craftsperson, right? Like when we're talking about people who do webtoons, who they've created their book, they only know comics through webtoons, right? The thing that I see visually is that they really have that problem making that jump to the printed page, because laying out a comic as a scroll is completely different than laying out your comic for print. And I've seen this problem happen time and time again, where when they take a webtoons and they try to make a comic out of it, like a printed comic, and then it becomes a layout nightmare, because the language of a webtoon is not really made for print, and the entire layout becomes complicated to change, because the way panels flow in a scroll is completely different than how panels relate to each other on a printed page. And it's like, unless you're a designer that knows how to make that connection, the books that I've seen, I don't know whether it's improved any, but like when they do webtoons as printed comics, they think that all they have to do is just put the boxes just side by side. Oh, and that's a comic. It's like, oh, we did it, right? And it's like, oh, absolutely not. That's not how you do it. Where it's kind of like, like translating a language, translating English into a language you don't know. You think it's like, well, the translator did it. It's just that, right? And it's like, no, you're missing a lot of the visual nuance of the layout that comes in the layout. One of the comic exercises that I enjoy is putting together, is doing my panels in a way where you don't need the word balloons to tell you what's going on. Right now, of course, it's like we're talking, it's like, yeah, it's like you're going to miss a lot of like you're going to miss a lot of like deeper story. But if you were just to see the panels, right, that you could get a sense that panels drawn correctly in their layout stage, you should get a sense of the story of what's going on without having to see the dialogue. Which honestly, I think that that's something that's missing from manga most of the time. If I honestly, it's like, yeah, it's like that's something. But then again, it's like a lot of people, I don't think they underestimate that skill. Because if we want to talk about comics as storytelling, the visuals have to do as much of the storytelling as the actual dialogue, the word balloons, whatever is in that dialogue. Hold on, let me get my character sheet. Actually, no, let me get a previous page. Hold on, what page can I open? Let's open this one. I think we can do this one. And from what I remember from Spawn, even with Todd McFarlane's dog writing it, right? If you took out the dog's dialogue, right, you probably most likely couldn't tell what the story was. And ironically, Todd McFarlane had said this himself. I mean, God, the guy is so shit when it comes to like this. I mean, it's like he literally said that he could throw that what he does is that he draws the book and then he can throw the pages on the floor, and whatever order they fall in, that's the book, because it doesn't matter. He'll just write the story according to like what panels, flow to each other, because it's like it doesn't matter. The story never mattered to him. Although what's funny was that they didn't matter until the first chance he got, he hired Alan Moore, to write his shit for him. Like he hired all of these writers, but they don't matter, but he had to hire them anyway, right? So it's like, if you can't tell the story, or at least get the vibe of the story by just looking at the artwork without the dialogue, then your story is not half of it is still missing. It's like I said, it's not just pretty pictures back and forth. And Webtoons has a problem with this too. The people who draw exclusively for Webtoons, because in the end, Webtoons is more their Webtoons priority is more for speed than for accuracy, than for actual storytelling. It's like, honestly, it's like when I hear people talking about Webtoons, the main thing that they talk about is whether there's enough chapters coming out every week, right? And based on one article that I read about Webtoons, like every weekly update is the equivalent of 11 pages of a standard comic book. And so storytelling really takes a back seat. That's why, whenever I see like a Webtoons thing, most likely than not, it's all talking heads, right? Because there's no time to really draw anything else. It's talking heads and whatever assets, Clip Studio assets they're using in the background, right? And yeah, that's kind of like more the peeve, because it's like, because that's part of the craft of doing comics that's meaningful for me is the storytelling, that it's like, does my artwork and my story work together to create a book that people will actually want to stick with? And I think that's part of what these types of campaigns irks me about. It's like, oh, we're just doing a comic. Yeah, but what does that really mean? You're just and it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being, I'm trying to justify, I guess, like the feels that I had for this campaign, and trying to like logically, try to give like some kind of, maybe in the end, it's like, look, it was just like, I was just being a hater. Maybe in the end, it's like, it has nothing to do with anything. I was just being a hater. And it's like, and I saw these people put up a comic, not knowing anything, not knowing the space, not it's like probably never have done a comic before, and they made 60 grand, and it's just like, fuck, man, it's like, how hard do I have to work at this? Maybe that had everything to do with it. Maybe it has nothing to do. I mean, would I have felt better if they made 12? It's like, maybe if they made $12,000, maybe I wouldn't have felt so, because I guess it would have still felt like in the realm of what I could attain, and and it is just kind of, maybe, yeah, so maybe it's just that's just what it is, because, yeah, maybe, it's like, in the end, all I have to I just have to worry about, like, the work that I'm doing. It's like, I can't, in the end, I can't worry about people who have an audience that'll eat up anything. And I can't say that they'll eat up anything, because it's like I said, it's like their audience are already familiar with these people's books. So obviously it's not the writing that's the problem. It's like they already had the writing. They don't technically need the comic to be a literary anything. Um but but when it comes to, like, the craft of it, I mean, that's where I kind of have, like, if I'm thinking about it that way, that's where I kind of, like, really, like, okay, these are where my real pet peeves are. It's like formats that don't translate, and no effort is put into making it translate. So it's like, if you're doing a webtoons and you want to do it in print, you really have to think ahead as to how you're going to design your webtoons in order for it to translate to the printed page. Just like I have Eagle Raven, the several issues of Eagle Raven on webtoon. But the thing is that I know the mistake that I made was just putting up full issues, like full pages as is on webtoons, instead of optimizing the comic pages for that format. So in the end, I can't really be too upset about, oh, well, I put it on webtoons, but it really didn't do anything for me. It didn't really gain any traction. So webtoons is, no, I wouldn't recommend webtoons. But that's kind of inaccurate. It's not that webtoons isn't good. I didn't gain any traction on it because I didn't translate for the language, the visual language that webtoons actually uses. I'm expecting people who read traditional American comics to read, I'm expecting people who read online comics on the regular to just all of a sudden decide that my traditionally laid out comic is just like, well, this is how you're going to get it, and not cater to that format. And I know for a fact that that's been an issue for me on webtoon. But I also have to accept the fact that the reason I did that was because I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to put in the time to reformat all my pages to fit that format, essentially. So it's like, so in the end, what am I complaining about? I'm complaining that, oh, look, it's the consequences of my actions or lack of action. I refuse to set up my comic according to the preferred format on this platform, and lo and behold, my traction is, not very good, right? And I have to recognize that. Here is, two authors who decided they wanted their novels to be represented in a visual medium, right? That they still succeeded at, even without knowing anything about that visual medium, but their audience got them over. And that would have happened too. If it really is amazing, like how much of marketing doesn't matter when you have an audience large enough to not give a shit. So, where was I? Oh, okay, yeah. So I don't know. I guess, yeah. So I guess in the end, it's like these arguments about comics and who deserves to be in comics. What counts, what doesn't count is actually in the end pretty stupid. It's a pretty stupid conversation because like I said, when you have Todd McFarlane saying the stupid shit that he's saying, it kind of discredits every argument right there, then and there, It's like, because what he's essentially saying is that it doesn't matter. None of this matters. Are you selling thousands of copies? Are you making $60,000 on Kickstarter? Then who cares? Right? Who cares if you don't know, the history of American comics? Who cares if you don't know the formatting? Who cares if, you don't know the nuances of storytelling, between storytelling in artwork and storytelling in general? Who cares? But we still react to it. Hold on. Let me get okay. Now I think I'm just going to get my character sheet. It'll just be a lot easier. That's why I have them anyway. Okay. Where are they? Where is he? E, F, G. Where are you? Oh, here you are. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling. But you know what? But I'm always going to hold the idea, though, that in the end, it doesn't matter how good your artwork is. If your story sucks, no one's going to hang around. Your artwork is only going to hold on to that audience for so long. Unless, of course, you're Todd McFarlane and you have the financing to push your books through regardless. Right? But it's like, it's like, the story, it's the story, stupid. It's, I have read books with kind of, mediocre artwork, but the story was really compelling. But I have also read books where the artwork was excellent, but the story was stupid as fuck. Right? And I've actually had a situation where I read two books where they had that problem. One of them had a story that I wanted to read, but the artwork was really bad. And then another one had really, really good artwork, but the story was really, really bad. And in the end, I don't read either of them because the balance, it's like the balance was just like not there. When it comes to comic books, I need that balance. Like, the story that I wanted to read, like I said, the artwork was really, really bad. Well, if the artist cared enough, they could have improved it, you know? But they didn't. They just kind of like their concern was that they were able to sketch out panels, you know, to have finished panels within 5 minutes, than whether the panel was actually good looking. Right? So this was a creator who prioritized speed over care. And because of that, in the end, their story wasn't strong enough to cover the fact that the artwork wasn't really that good. The story was like way too thin on the ground to justify me looking at this artwork that screamed, I don't give a shit. Like, it's more important for me to rush through these pages than it is to give you nice artwork to look at to go with the story. Because, sorry, your story wasn't that good either, you know, to overlook that. You know, and then this other book, the story, I mean, the artwork was really good, but the story was so dumb, the artwork couldn't save it. Like, they're just, you know, it has to work together. The artwork and the story has to work together. Because again, if I just wanted to read the story, I'd buy the novel. If I just buy a novel, if I just wanted to look at artwork, I'd buy an art book. But if you're asking me to invest my time into a comic, both of those things have to work. You know, so in the end, you know what? I don't know what my argument is. I mean, because it is kind of all over the place, because there are like different aspects of it. You know, it's like one, you know, it's like, okay, we've already seen enough Kickstarters where people just, they're succeeding for everything else other than the quality of their book. Right? But, you know, it's like, look, but I've seen people, it's like, look, they have the audience for it. So, you know, what's there to say, really? And then you have, let's see. Purple Rain says, that's the way Spider-Gwen was. Great art, but the story was so empty. I got suckered into the whole Spider-Verse when the first animated one came out. I made it through the title change and dropped it. You know, right. Eventually, you know, it's not enough to hold up. But also, I think the same thing with Spawn and with Spider-Gwen. You know, it's like when we're talking about, because it's like, look, Spawn is a corporate comic. Spider-Gwen is a corporate comic. You know, it's like they're IPs. It's like, so in the end, we're talking about these it's like it stopped being a passion project for everybody. You know, it's like Spawn, I don't think hasn't been a passion project for decades. It's like it's a product any more than like corn or, you know, spaghetti sauce. Like, it's just there to churn and burn an audience. It got to 300 issues not because it's an excellent read, you know, because look, all you have to do is go outside and ask the first person that crosses your path, right? Oh, what do you think about the latest Spawn issue? They wouldn't know what the fuck you were talking about. You know? But, you know, but you ask them about Captain America and they'll talk to you about the movie. The most likely they saw the movie. but they couldn't tell you what was happening in the comics. And when we're talking about corporate comics, we're just talking about the only reason it hit 300 issues because he forced it through. You know, he had the money to do that. It's a product. He had 300 issues of Spawn the same way you have 300 jars of spaghetti sauce in a supermarket. It's just churning and burning through an audience, because I will be hard pressed to find, I am pretty sure that there are very few people who have collected all 300 issues. And that's, and in the end, it's like, that's kind of like a different situation, these people, these corporations, they don't care if you drop it, as long as there's somebody else behind you to pick it up. Right. So, and as long as there's always somebody to pick it up, then it's like they don't care if you're reading it or not reading it, or just throwing it in the garbage after you leave the comic book store. As long as they have your money and can say, I sold X amount of issues or X amount of copies, that's all they really care about. But it's like, I think, like, for smaller creators like us, like me, it's like, I want people to actually enjoy my work, as a story, as the artwork. I want it, I want the, so I put a lot of effort into that. And it's like, I don't know. And I guess it's like, that's what kind of irritates me when I see people who look like they're not putting in the effort, but getting, I guess, not the accolades, but just like the rewards of it. Right. But also, that just goes to show you that, effort and reward has nothing to do with it, or knowledge and reward have nothing to do with each other. In the end, it's like, people either resonate with your stuff or it does, or they don't. But also at the same time, you don't want to get caught up in the idea that it's like, oh, well, this book made X amount of money on Kickstarter, it must mean it's a really good book. No, it just means that they had an audience that'll buy it. It like I said, how talented of a writer is Todd McFarlane's dog anyway? It's like, and it's like, and the thing that Joe had said, earlier, that it's like that he had stopped doing Kickstarters because his ego couldn't take the idea that he just didn't have an audience on Kickstarter, and it's like, but that doesn't mean you don't have an audience. It just means that they're not on Kickstarter. Like, that's also like another conversation that comes up a lot, where there are creators who, it's like, no matter what they do, they can't get any traction on Kickstarter or crowdfunding, but they go to a convention and they sell more copies than they've ever sold on Kickstarter. On Kickstarter, they can barely sell 30 copies, but when they're at a convention, they're selling out. They're like, oh, I could sell 100 copies easy at a convention. So that just means that that's where your audience is, that your audience is not on Kickstarter. So you can't be mad at Kickstarter. Right. Purple Rain says, I have read local comic book artists that have books that are amazing. No, absolutely. And sometimes, they're just as satisfied as being local artists, that, yeah, it's just that when you put them out on the larger stage, it takes a while for the audience to gather, I guess, because it's like it's a signal to noise ratio, right? Like one of the things that I've been doing recently is like, just trying to figure out different ways of promoting my stuff and trying to like find different audiences for my stuff. And one of the things that I was just experimenting is like kind of like, like resurrecting my Instagram page. And I'm not sure like how helpful that's going to be, right? But the unintended consequence of that is that I began to find it interesting trying to create like these carousels for Instagram, and like trying to like figure out like the verbiage and the visuals and that could attract attention. And in the end, and it's like, so like, instead of getting like wrapped up about like, oh, well, is this working or this, that, and the other thing? Am I finding people, blah, blah. It's like, I'm more like, how can I think about my book in a way that will attract the people that I think will be most interested in? And I don't know. It's like I've actually been kind of enjoying trying to make these little advertising, these little carousels and these little videos, and just like trying to get the hang of it. Let's see. Purple Rain says, because at conventions you're visible and there to talk to people who enjoy the person's signature, it just feels more personal. I agree. It's like, yeah, because it's like when people like when they're talking, yeah, it's like you're building that rapport, that physical rapport, right? Which can be very helpful. But it's like, yeah, but it's like, then conventions has their own issues, right? Like just recently there was this discussion on Blue Sky about how furry conventions are picking up the bad habits of anime conventions. And now it's like showrunners are expecting people to like give them portfolios of what their setup is going to look like and what kind of merchandise they're going to have and what their table would look like. And it's like, whatever happened to just being able to buy a table at a convention and show up with your portfolio? Now you have to be like this whole production, right? And not only that, but it's like that's like on top of being, like, oh, and you have to be in a lottery, right? And the tables are hella expensive on top of it. Oh yeah. No, it's ridiculous. I hated it when I started seeing that at anime conventions. But then again, because ever since they switched to the whole lottery system, I don't think I've been able to get into an anime convention since like the late 90s. I swear to God, maybe the 2000s, I think like the last convention we must have anime convention was like Anime Boston, and I can't even begin to tell you how long ago that was. And it's like, yeah, and there was a time, he says, I hate that you have to pay for a table. Look, there was a time where we paid $50 to be in an artist alley because that's where all like the amateur starting artists used to be. So it's like, oh, you know, here's $50. You know, you pay $50 for a table, you know, and you got to be at a convention and sell your stuff, right? And kind of like, you know, work your way up, right? But now a lot of the bigger conventions have pushed all their professionals into the artist alley, right? Leaving no option for like even if I were just to like, I can't even pay for an artist alley table because, oh, you're not a professional, so we're not going to give you the privilege of buying an artist alley table, right? And then it's like, and then you have like anime conventions, and like I said, like now furry conventions are doing this. Although I don't know by how much, I just, you know, where it's like now you have to, as an amateur artist or a starting artist, you have to come out of the gate looking like a professional. Like, you know, it's like, oh, well, do you have merch? It's like, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, where it's kind of like the equivalent of how am I supposed to have, how am I supposed to have experience if you're not giving me the opportunity to create that experience, right? Do you do comic book shops? Me personally, I do not. New York comic shops are mostly chain shops, and I haven't had any luck really creating a rapport with them, me personally. So that's why it's like I'm trying to like angle what I'm doing kind of like away from the more, I guess, kind of like the traditional way that comics people would promote themselves, because I personally am not finding a lot of luck with it. I mean, like I said, it's like I would love to do, like, I think that my work would fit in with anime conventions. I just can't get into them because I never make it through the lottery stage. I have been trying to get into Anime NYC for like years, and I never get in. I apply every time. This is the first year that I just bothered not to apply. Although I did do something a little different this year, but it wasn't for me. So let's see how that works out. And, you know, and it's like, oh, I think that's his finger. Yeah, that's right. You know, and it's like, you know, so comic book shops are kind of like the same thing for me. Like the amount of times that I've tried to have even just put postcards in comic book shops only to be constantly, oh, you got to talk to this person, you got to talk to that person. You know, it's like, oh, we can't just put the cards there. They have to be approved and this person's not in, or this, that, and the other thing. It's like, it's just like, okay, you know what? I don't have the energy for this. I don't have the energy for this. Years ago, I probably spent an entire week calling up every comic book shop in the tri-state area, just trying to get them to like, what was I doing? Was I like promoting a book, or was I trying to sell them a book? I don't remember what I was doing. That's how long ago it was. And every single, I think it was like trying to get them to even look at my book. And I think this was for a different book, but it's like, it doesn't matter because it never got that far, because every single store that I called up all pretty much gave me the variation of fuck off. Or are you in Diamond previews? No, then we're not looking at your stuff. Right. And if you don't, Diamond Previews is the industry catalog that no longer exists. Now it's like it's a completely different chaos situation going on right now. And I couldn't get anybody to even, like, back in the early days, it was a lot easier. But now, it's like, because I remember hearing, people going, oh, yeah, we just drop comics off and they would have it. And it's like, no, now it's like, I think I only had one shop that said, oh, yeah, we'll take your books on consignment, but you're the one that has to keep track of anything. We don't keep track of anything. Right? I mean, shocker, the place doesn't exist anymore. They closed for some reason, but like they were the only ones, right? Everybody else were like, oh, either we're not interested, don't bother me, or if you're not in previews, we're not gonna look at it, right? And then what makes that worse was that my books were banned from the previews catalog for years before that. So I couldn't have been in the previous catalog even if I wanted to. So it was a whole mess. So that's why it's like, I'm trying to find something different, right? But also I think that, I have to like show myself some grace, because also it's like by kind of like dwelling on how difficult it is, whenever like a campaign like the one that I told you about, they come in, they make 60 grand and they leave. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Like, how are they doing that? In the end, it's like there's a whole bunch of shit happening in the background that I don't know about, or I do have a suspicion about. And, in the end, that has nothing to do with me. I can only worry about, okay, what's the information I have? And what am I willing to do? Right? It's like, what can I do? What am I willing to do? If all the kids, if all the manga kids are on TikTok, am I willing to go on TikTok? If my answer is no, I cannot be mad at not having access to that audience. Right? If I know I could do well, I could probably get the audience, like go to anime conventions. But if I can't get into them, I can't be mad at that. I can't get wrapped up in that, because it's like, that's something beyond my control. Look, I can't even get into New York Comic Con anymore unless I want to spend $2,000. And then that's another thing I have to consider. If I am unwilling to spend $2,000, knowing the logistics of what I would have to do to make back that $2,000, I can't be uptight at not being able to access that audience. So I have to figure out, what can I do that will give me access to audiences that I feel would be interested in my work, but doing it in a way that I could actually do it. And it's like, and it does get frustrating. Because it's like, we hear all this advice about, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and you should do the other thing, right? But it's so dependent on so many variables that also, and also you have to really consider the people who are giving that advice too. Because if it's one thing that's really, really standing out for me, is how many people give advice. Oh, hello, Far Star Lover. Hello. New York Comic Con is too expensive now. Same with Anime NYC. Yeah. And again, it's like, that's if you can even get into them. I mean, it's ridiculous as to how these conventions, it's like, and then, oh, I only bought a single badge for Anime NYC this year. Yeah. I mean, because that was the thing too. Last year, because it's like, there was this whole conversation again on Blue Sky about how the CEO of Reed Pop right? Who owns most of these conventions, these large conventions, right? I think it's like Reed Pop and Fan Expo. I guess like they're two major rivals in the comic convention scene. It's like they're talking about how, oh yeah, our competition is Coachella. It's like, where the fuck did you make that connection? What does Coachella have to do with comics? What does Coachella have to do with manga? Right? And then it's like, he's talking, so it's like, he's already announcing the changes that we're going to start seeing in the next couple of years to comic book conventions, which means it's going to get worse. A Far Star Lover says, not bothering with the $200 for 4 days because prices are costly and I refuse to buy more due to budgeting. No, absolutely. Because last year I had wanted to go to Anime Expo, to Anime NYC. Anime Expo's in California. Anime NYC, just to check it out, right? And just buying tickets, a 1-day pass for me and my husband would have been $200. And they have the nerve to charge you an extra $40 for the lanyards. I go, what are you doing? Right? Oh yeah, definitely forget it, Anime Expo. Forget it. Right. And then there's the skyrocketing cost of hotels, right? And this is New York. The hotels are expensive to begin with. They don't give a shit at what's going on at the Javits. The hotels are going to be expensive no matter what. And I think that Anime NYC is held in Times Square. Or at least no, last year was held at the Javits. And I think it's still at the Javits. And it's like, look, it's like the hotels here are insane. And that's what makes it frustrating. Like, this is a local convention to us and we can't even get into it. Right. And yeah, and it's like in buying tickets, it's like, you want me to spend $200 for 2 people to go into Anime NYC and you're charging me for the lanyards? I mean, just to give you perspective, tickets to Epic Universe for 2 days, for 1 day for 2 people was $400. I mean, it's like, are you telling me that this convention is like half the entertainment of an actual theme park for 1 day? Yeah, that's usually like, if you live in NYC, not a problem going to the cons. Again, just getting into them. If you're visiting, it'll cost more for your buck at those hotels unless you have friends. Yeah. Yeah, no, JD Calderon, Jose, he's my husband. He's the guy who does the Oswald Chronicles. So yeah, yeah, we're package deal. So so yeah, it's like, it's just like the cost. And so with this article in Forbes from the guy who runs Reed Pop, it's like, it's only going to get worse. And then what happens that because this guy wants to turn these conventions into kind of like world fairs where they have a little bit of everything, that's going to dilute the comic book market even more, because all he's going to be doing is because all he gives a shit about is head count. Right. But the problem is that not every person in your audience is equal. Right. Not every person at a convention is equal. It's like, if you're catering to the Coachella crowd, why would they buy comics? Right. No. NYCC hasn't been about comics in a while. Same thing with like San Diego and all that stuff. It's like, there was one publisher who said that they haven't been at San Diego Comic-Con in years because they kept seeing more and more people confused as to why you would want comics at a comic book convention. Like the fact that it's called San Diego Comic-Con doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, why would I want to buy a comic? And this has been a pattern that's been happening for years. It's like, it's yeah, exactly. It's like it's about fandom. Yeah, Far Star Liver. It's more about fandom than it is about the individual thing. Yeah, pop culture conventions. Ben says Comic Cons have basically turned into pop culture conventions. You know, where people who see the movies want to see the actors, but they could give a rat's ass about the medium that this shit came from. You know? Yes, modern Marvel is to blame. Is to blame for it. Yeah. Because they made that specific divide between comics and the movies. You know, I think if there's something different, if there's a difference between how the Japanese market, manga, anime market works and the American market works, is that in Japan, the anime and the manga go together. They work together. The manga leads up to the anime, and then the anime sells more manga. So it's a symbiotic relationship, right? In the United States, unless there's a very specific push for it, once a comic turns into a movie, the comic ceases to exist. You know, like they make Marvel makes no connection between Marvel and DC. They make no connection between their movies and the comics. You know, they don't even release comic book adaptations of the movies. You know, I mean, you know, so it's very easy to separate, you know, to separate that. You know, while in Japan, they both have to work together. You know, let's see. Adam says this is fire. Thank you. Someone saying it how it is. I don't like gatekeeping, but I wish a lot was gatekept because the new audience cares about surface level franchise and not the story. And then Little Dixie says a comic is just a storyboard for the movie nowadays. Yeah, exactly. They're just No, but there's something to be said about what Adam just said, right? Yeah, it's like we don't like gatekeeping, but we have to admit that gatekeeping exists for a reason, right? Because what happens is that, you know, because it's like, because there's a difference between gatekeeping and opening up the floodgates. And what happens is that what originally started off as our fandoms became so diluted, right, with casuals, right, that now nobody remembers like what the fandom was for to begin with. You know, I mean, I really do. This is going to sound really wrong, but it's like I really miss the days where you had to be a nerd to be into nerd shit. It's going to be very butchered. I'm pretty sure. That's why I don't like. I think I'm one of these rare creators where I don't really think about like, oh, what would a Netflix movie look like or of my stuff. It's like, you know what? It's like, you know what? It's like, you know what? I don't want it. I just want to tell the story the way I want it. And that's it. You get what I serve you. This is not a Wendy's. This is not a Wendy's, sir. This is not a Burger King. You do not get this your way. You get this my way. This is the story that I'm telling you. So this is the story you're going to get. You know, Purple Ray says, I hate how they don't stick to the source material. Oh, it wouldn't be like that in the real world. Oh, you mean like that? There's so many superheroes in real life. On my last vlog, I kind of talk about this in more detail, where it's kind of of course it's like, look, it's like, you know, where I contain multitudes. On one hand, right, I really do miss the days of nerd shit being for nerds. I really do. I really, really do. Because now we see what happens when nerd shit becomes so diluted with with casuals. Right? But at the same time, there does come a point where sometimes being too much into the source material doesn't allow creators to experiment with, well, creators can do whatever they want. I mean, I guess it's like when we're talking more about like once it gets into a little bit more of the wider culture, it's kind of like, there's never a good Star Wars movie because everyone wants the Star Wars that they grew up with, not the new shit that they're putting out. So it doesn't really allow for experimentation. Although ironically though, anime doesn't have a problem with this. Right? Right? Oh, yeah. Little Dixie says, I miss getting bullied for watching Dragon Ball. At least the people getting bullied care. There you go. Adam says, before a bully would call you a nerd and that was it. Now they call you a nerd with a modded car, crazy computers, and phone nerds built while wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt and a Punisher truck. I know, right? Like the disconnect is crazy. Oh, but so it's like, so so we kind of have to like be careful with depending too much, like expecting too much from nostalgia while still wanting new stuff. But like I said, it's like anime is different. Like anime companies have no problem retconning their stuff. And you have like a series that I was really into, Escaflowne, right? I don't know if you did that. That's kind of going back. I'm very old school. So Escaflowne has the television series and then it has the OVA, but I think it has like 2 OVAs, right? And one of the OVAs is completely different from the television series. Like they really like changed the story and everything, but I never got around to seeing it because I was so dedicated to the television series that I thought the OVA was different. But now, in my older, wiser years, I read a summary of the OVA, and now it's like, can I even find this so I can watch this? Like, it seems like what they did with the story was like, yeah, it was different, but it's still Escaflowne. It's just the creators decided to do something different, and I know that there's like a whole bunch of other series where they do that, where it's like the manga's one thing, and then it's like they kind of do something different in the, in the anime, and then novels too, where they do something different in the like I don't know, like the Japanese, they don't have a problem kind of like messing around with stuff like Dirty Pair, right? Like that there's kind of like 4 different versions of Dirty Pair, and it's like, honestly, I've, and you have a preference, right? Like Tenchi Muyo, the series that we worked on, right? We did an American version of it. This was back in the 90s. The trade paper, the Armature Entertainment just recently did a trade version of the American comics that I lettered and that we worked on. We worked on one of the first original anime stories. Like we didn't do an adaptation of Tenchi Muyo. We did an original American story. But Tenchi Muyo has like all these different iterations now. Like there's and I guess like depending on what you're into, you just choose the Tenchi Muyo that you like the best, right? I think Rurouni Kenshin has something similar. Like a lot of anime has. Little Dixie says, I have one of the OVA on CD for Escaflowne, and to me, it's just the show but shorter. Oh, okay, so you have yeah. So they just did it as a movie, right? But there's this other version is supposed to be really, really dark. Describing Tenchi Muyo like it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, right? So it's like there's all these different variations. But it's like here, it's it's like I see a lot of like people like, unless you are the nostalgic version they grew up with, they don't want it. It's garbage, it's trash, and blah blah blah, right? Um, let's see. As for me, anime took a crazy turn in the US. It was more dorky during Inuyasha, Dragon Ball Z era, but the fans can be really toxic and use anime almost like an attitude. Look, we were there, yeah, in the beginning of the American anime. I mean, oofa. Like if you weren't Japanese, they didn't consider what you were doing. I said, oh, that's not manga. That's not, oh, you don't, unless you're Japanese, you can't do this shit. Right. And now it's like, Purple Rain, people said that the movie Watchmen is too much like the comic book. That's why they hate it. Well, right. Oh, and then VNet says Kenshin low-key underrated. It was a top 5. I watched The Child, but I completely forgot about it until someone brings it up. And happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Elevator has a guide rail. So so it's just like, it's just like, I think, I don't know, it's like, I guess like American fandom is just really weird. But going back to what Adam said, right? That it's like gatekeepers exist for a reason. It's like, on one hand, we don't like them, but on the other hand, they serve a purpose. There's a reason why the gates were there. So, I mean, that's and it's like, yeah, it's like, because it's like, I missed those days. I miss those days. Because it's like, now it's like, to be a creator in this space is a lot more difficult. Because, these companies, they want to attract as many people as possible, but the problem is that the quality, they don't care about the quality of the people that they're attracting. Yeah, I agree too, Little Dixie. As an old anime fan, we need more gatekeepers. Yeah. Because like I said, it's like the audience that they're attracting, not everybody is equal in terms of the overall fandom, and I think that it stunts us for a reason. I mean, it certainly destroyed. I mean, there's plenty of videos of people going to anime conventions, and now they're saying that it's just like either all AI slop. Yes, Elevator, I am a comic book creator. I'm actually working on a page from my comic right now. And I have a link to my Kickstarter in the chat and in the show notes if you want to check it out. Where they're talking about like the artist alley, because of the cost of everything, how every creator has kind of like melded into like selling the same thing. Everybody has like, what did one person say? Like, oh, here are my 100 Genshin Impact keychains and the one comic that I did. Like it's completely changed the entire vibe of these conventions. Where it's like, we used to go to anime conventions and comic book conventions to to see new things, to see our favorite stuff, right? All the fan stuff that we liked, and to see all the like the new stuff people were doing. Like to see the indie creators who were doing their own manga and their own comic books, and now you don't even get that. It's everybody selling fucking keychains and plush dolls and shit that have nothing to do with anything. And it's like, what the heck? But it's because the tables are so expensive. It's like, do you know how many like books I would have? Like going back to the NYCC, example, it's like if a booth costs me $2,000, that's a hell of a lot of comic books I have to sell. You know, and and not everybody is going to want, my comic book. So it's like, it's not like, it's like, I just have to sell X amount. It's like, that's not how that works. The convention math. If this convention has 100,000 people, if I just get everybody to spend $1 at my table, I'll make $100,000. That's not how it works. Adam says it's what it is now. Only thing to do is try to keep the new cool stuff low key for as long as possible. But to be honest, our time as old heads is done. It's the new generation to decide what happens. It's true. Yeah, exactly. I just muted myself. Sorry. This is what happens when I switch between shortcuts on my screen and shortcuts on my Wacom, on my tablet. But the thing is, though, I am seeing some pushback, but I don't know how much of a pushback it's going to be, when you have these billion-dollar companies buying up these conventions and saying, we're just going to make it like Coachella. Like, how much, like, if every anime fan decided not to go at the same time, every comic book fan, because you know what, we're not going to go to Read Pop conventions anymore. We're not going to go to anime, conventions run by these conglomerates anymore. Like, would we make a difference? Or would they just replace us with, they just turn it into the World's Fair that they want to? It's like, well, this is just a hangout place now for people. As long as they're paying their $200 to get in, we don't care if you're an anime fan, a comic book fan, or just somebody who just wants to spend the time, whatever, walking a glorified flea market, and that's, and the only way to get around that is for people, these, newer heads, to come in and create new conventions. But again, we're talking about spaces that are being deliberately made expensive to keep the competition out. It's the whole thing that I read about. Coke doesn't buy advertising to sell Coke. They buy advertising to keep advertising prohibitively expensive for competitors. Advertising nowadays has nothing to do with product. It has everything to do with making it expensive so that new people can't come in. That's also the thing too, right? Well, people don't seem to hate it. The local con I go to gets more and more crowded every year, right? It's kind of like the Disney effect, that it's like people complain about how bad the Disney parks are being run, but then how come it's always crowded? And that's the thing that these companies depend on. As long as there are people who really don't mind it, they don't care if we, as people who remembered the good times, the better times, they don't care if we don't like it. Adam says there will always be people that will still attend and eat the slop. Yeah, that's why concerts still sell out with bands no one has ever heard of for 30 years. Well, because they're selling on the nostalgia, and also they don't mind paying the exorbitant Ticketmaster prices. The tickets are actually like $75, but there's $300 worth of fees on it that have no reason to be there. So yeah, I don't know what's going to take, like, how this pendulum is going to swing, honestly. Because you see, the problem with casuals, with catering to casuals, is that they're casuals. These are people who are not loyal to you. They're not loyal to the product. They're not loyal to you. They're just hanging out and they're moving on. So these companies, it's like, it's like, oh, we're going to make as much money as possible. But at the same time, they're kicking that can down the road as to whether they're actually creating a loyal fan base or not. Like they're cornering the market on fandom while destroying the very fandoms they need, because there's gonna come a point where the IPs don't mean anything if you're not creating loyalty, because that's the switchover, right? It's like now their customers are not us. Their customers are their shareholders. Their shareholders get paid no matter how they do it. It has nothing to do with creating a product, a good product that people are loyal to or anything, right? And maybe they know this and maybe they're not, right? But it's like, but their whole goal is to create as much value for shareholders as possible. And if people, and it doesn't matter if people are loyal to the brand, they're, and then eventually those people, they'll stop making money off of these people, but that's for future people to worry about. That's not for them to worry about. As long as the shareholders get their money now, that's what they're going for. But us Pepperidge Farms remembers the value of loyalty, right? And and I think going back to the whole Todd McFarlane thing where he says that, oh, nobody cares as long as the artwork. And it's like, look, trust me that when Todd McFarlane dies, Spawn is going to die with him. Because in the end, it's not only just his artwork that sells Spawn, it's his personality. And the problem is that he's the only one. Right. Yeah, exactly. They only go to a concert to say that I went to see fill in the blank concert. Right. It's just another form of content. It's not really an experience that you actually sit in and, you're like, wow, it's like, this is actually affecting me. Now it's just a checklist, right? It's a content checklist. I went to the Taylor Swift concert. I went to blah, blah, blah. I went to this. I went to that, and that's a detriment to the culture, right? And like I said, it's like us old heads, remember, we know what it's like to have a piece of media put us in a chokehold that it becomes part of our personality. Well, or at least that we enjoy it tremendously, right? Now they're not even building that. Now it's like on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, right? It's like, and like I said, when Todd McFarlane leaves this mortal coil, Spawn is going with him, because they're not going to be able to keep whatever momentum that he has on that book with all the money that they're making. They're not going to be able to keep that, because in the end, a lot of the interest in Spawn has to do with him and not necessarily that whole parasocial, parasocial accessory. Spawn is a parasocial accessory to Todd McFarlane. And that's what people are buying into. They're not really buying into Spawn itself, right? As smaller creators, we want more than that, which only leads to the frustration that, we're going through, with this, that it's like, we're being, did I just not select my stuff here? What am I doing? We're being told marketing, but at the same time, it's like these are the same companies that are blocking us from, like, they're gatekeeping us from building an audience. Like, because there comes a point where there's only so much we can do as creators to find our audience, you know? But, you know, you kind of, again, it's like, I have to also understand, like, what am I willing and not willing to do, and then accept the consequences of that as well. But it gets harder and harder to do what I'm willing to do because these companies are making it harder and harder, less accessible, let's just say. You know, like I just read that Subscribestar is now acting up, you know, so it's another place where artists are finding it more and more difficult to put the artwork that they want make available, that they want to make available. But that's a story for a different for another time. But yeah, so is it cultural, right? Is the way the Japanese deal, you know, like handle the way they handle their comics, you know, the manga, the anime, their conventions, like even their conventions are really different, right? The way the Americans do it. Like even France, like I said, talking about my Franco-Belgian comics, right? So mostly from France. The government actually pays people. They give a stipend to high school students to invest in culture. And 70% of that money goes to manga and comics. Like the government's literally paying kids to buy comics. Because culturally, they feel that culturally it's important. Yeah, Melissa. Yeah, the Hays Code, really. I mean, yeah, you know. Adam says, on the other hand, there's a lot of great, cool works outside the mainstream, and they get good views. Indie is there, but it's not as a scene. We consume their work, and it's quietly celebrated. It's true. It's true. There's a lot of books that I read that I enjoy that aren't part of the larger mainstream. You know, it's just trying to create a scene that doesn't necessarily have to be connected to that mainstream. You know, they pay, yes, they do. They pay people to buy comics in France. There's a stipend. I think it's between, you get a stipend, a culture stipend between the ages of 13 and 18. And it's a cultural stipend. You can spend it on museums, you can spend it on making art, you can spend it on buying art, you can spend it on movies, as long as it's culturally relevant. And 70% of it goes to comics and manga. Yes, it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. And I think that has a lot to do with why other countries treat this differently than Americans. And I think that might be where that cultural divide is. You know, where here, everything is about the hustle, right? Where in Europe, Japan, what we do is the culture. You know, and that just leads it to a larger discussion, as what's considered culture in the United States. Hold on for a sec. Hold on. So, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that we're like 2 hours and a half. And I still didn't finish my page. But you know, um you know, No, I'm trying. You know what it is? I don't want to be. Well, I had the gloom and doom at the beginning, right? But in the end, it's like that's not something that I want to focus on. People love to complain and doom about comics, but no one has ever talked about how awesome it is. It's because we are awesome. It's just what it is. Yes, it's 4:41. Yeah, I know. I gotta go. It's because it is awesome. It's just that being negative is easier for views on the internet. And you know what? I don't want to be a part of that. I really don't. I really don't. Oh my goodness. Because it's like, look, in the end, I love what I do and I want other people to love what I do too. I want us to love this medium. It's like I don't see why that's so hard. But hey, capitalism. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I mean, look, the conversation like really got going after the second hour mark. So you know what? I wasn't going to just close off the stream thing. It's like I just wasn't. Oh my goodness. So yeah, so this is where I'm at right now. So let's just take another look at it with the highlights added in, just to kind of like show you how this page is being built, right? With the flats, and there's not much left to do, and then there's some special effects on the map on the table that I still have to do, but that shouldn't take me that long. So hopefully in about like an hour or so, I'll have this page finally finished. So yeah, let's have, Purple Rain, let's put a pin in it. Let's have it to be continued. We'll continue this conversation on the next live stream. So let's just put that there. So, that was a really good conversation. You guys really came in clutch. It's like after that, like I said, I couldn't not stop. I couldn't stop, because it's like, but then again, it's like, that's why I like doing streams, because it's like, then we end up having, thank you, Purple Rain. Thank you. That's why I like having the chat, because it's like, we have a conversation, we're talking, I'm trying to work. You know what it is? This is probably as closest to being at a convention right now. As I could, except now nobody has to worry about whether you're blocking my table or not, so, oh my goodness. So this is where we're at. So thank you so much, everybody, for keeping me company for this 2.5-hour extravaganza. I guess. Thank you so much. I really had a lot of fun. So yeah, so let's do this again sometime, right? Let's do this again. So thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you, all of my beautiful eyeball people. Thank you, everybody who's been watching. And even if you're catching this on the replay, while you're here, make sure you like, share, subscribe, put a comment. I don't know. Tell me about your favorite anime or your favorite convention moment or whatever in the comments. While you're here, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you get notified whenever any of my live streams go live. Because I actually like doing these better than doing recorded videos because of the conversations that always pop up. Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Vina. Thank you, Purple Rain. Thank you, Dixie. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much, everybody. Elevator guy, thank you so much. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everybody. Afrain. Thank you, everybody who joined me. Farstar Lover, thank you so much for joining me in the chat. And if you want to learn more about me and my artwork and my Kickstarters and all my other nonsense, you can head on over to my main portfolio site at egoworks.com, EGOWORKS, where you can read Ego Raven, Heir the First Unicorn for free. But if you prefer your fantasy to be more of a furry Lord of the Rings adventure, you can follow the link over to Tall Tales. That's TAILS online.com. And you can read the archive of over 1,000 comic pages there. It'll definitely keep you busy. And while you're there, oh, I don't have it here. I don't have my QR code. Well, while you're at the websites, make sure that you also sign up. Oh, I guess the QR code's right there. That's why I don't have a pop-up. The QR code's right there. Scan the QR code or go to the websites. Make sure to sign up for my newsletter where you can keep up to date with all of my new art, my sketchbooks, my comics, my Kickstarters, and get a free PDF comics bundle just for joining. You get to read Ego Raven for free. You get to read Tall Tales for free. And you also get to read the Oswald Chronicles for free as well. So you get like a whole bunch of comics just for signing up. Also, remember, Ego Raven, Heir the First Unicorn, issue 12 is on Kickstarter right now. Link is in the chat and in the show notes. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I really had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for all your comments and your likes and everything, and your subs and all your little hearts and everything. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember that as we part here, be better today than you were yesterday. Be better tomorrow than you were today. That's all pretty much any of us, that's pretty much the only thing anybody can ever ask. Oh boy, I need a nap. So thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you next time.
You are all weirdos. Ugh.